I am the living bread that came down from heaven. If anyone eats this bread, he will live forever. The bread that I will give him is my flesh, which I give, so that the world may live.
I don't think we would be able to do what we are doing if we didn't have that deep union with Him in the Eucharist, because our love for Jesus is more intimate. Our love for each other, more understanding. Our love for the poor, more compassionate. And I think that's the fruit of the tenderness of God. Jesus' love for us in the Eucharist. He's always with us, everywhere, all times, to be our life, our love, our strength, our joy, our peace.
Just outside this eastern port city, known for its rich historical significance, there has occurred perhaps one of the most graphic and convincing Eucharistic phenomena to take place in this country. During Lent 1995, a Eucharistic minister near the town of Methuen was preparing to give Holy Communion to a sick child. Upon opening the tabernacle, the Eucharistic minister discovered a consecrated host oozing blood. Father John Mead, a Marist father from Our Lady of Mount Carmel Parish in Methuen, was contacted immediately after the initial occurrence.
As I say, I grew from a tremendous skepticism, which is, I think, the growing steps you need, any priest would need. I'd worried to death about people who, very often they're fanatic, that go in and they want to believe. Therefore, I don't think I've ever seen it when it looked the same as the time before. It always looked a little different to me, either smaller or bigger or more spread out. It looks like a host that somebody has dropped some tea on it and blotched it. The only difference is it changes. It's not always the same shape, not necessarily the same shape. It's not always the same size. So there's something happening there.
Because the host appeared to constantly alter itself, Father René Laurentin, the world's foremost Mariologist and expert in mysticism, suggested the host be properly preserved. It was immediately placed in a small glass receptacle for holy objects, called a reliquary.
When this bled, and it was already in a reliquary, it bled. It was as if there was some way to injure that host, and if you took a pin or something and scratched it, it bled.
I saw 3 thick veins. They looked dark blue, almost black. I saw some smaller, tiny veins going in a vertical direction, very fine, almost thread-like. Inga McNeil.
First of all, they would have to know the subjective evidence. You could not simply take the word of a priest. You'd have to have the subjective evidence. And that subjective evidence, of course, is revealed not simply by what you see, but also ought to be subjected to scientific investigation.
After witness testimonies were collected, Dr. Boguslaw Lipinski, a biochemist and blood specialist from Boston, was asked to do a non-invasive test with the host to determine the origin and nature of the oozing substance.
And when she opened this and showed it to me, I said, wow, this, I work with blood for all my life. I know how the blood looks like. I can immediately distinguish between anything else. And this was like a partly fresh, partly already clotted blood on the surface of the host touching the glass. And on the glass you could see that almost still fresh blood. So I said, well, that certainly looks for me as blood. But again, as a scientist, I have to prove it.
Dr. Lipinski conducted preliminary tests which indicated the presence of blood. But still more conclusive tests were needed to prove if it was human blood. On August 30th, 1995, crust samples from the host were examined at the California Lab of Forensic Science in Yorba Linda, California. Forensic specialist Dean Gialamas conducted visual, chemical, and microscopic tests. The initial tests for blood using the OTOL and LMG method were both positive. The lab then used the most conclusive test available to forensic science in distinguishing the presence of human blood, called crossover electrophoresis. This test confirmed the substance coming from the consecrated host was human blood. After confirming it was human blood, the focus shifted more toward the witnesses.
Oh yes, what's called a popular cult always has some objective of value as far as the church is concerned. But of course we have to distinguish there between people too. We're talking now about normal type of people, psychological, as well as in their understanding of the church. We're assuming that what you mean by people, you're talking about people who have an ordinary, good perception of what the church is teaching, and who are also not unduly imaginative. That is, that psychologically they're sound.
The church follows the gospel's admonition to judge a tree by its fruits. The priests and laity involved say they have indeed received substantial spiritual graces.
I no longer offer our Lord in the Mass in faith. He has said, look, here's the proof of it. So, I mean, I feel called upon to spend much more time with him, and it's his love is just incomprehensible, so, and frustrating at times because you're so weak and sinful, but it's just God speaking, saying, I am in the host.
Father Meade says there are indeed great spiritual fruits, but he believes the more important reaction is that Catholics are awakening from their spiritual sleep regarding the Eucharist.
He's trying to call our attention. The main thing is that God so loves us, he gave us his only begotten Son. That's got to get to us. That's got to reach us somehow, some way. That's got to come into our life. And we've got to make a decision about it. We've got to do something about it. I give you my only begotten Son, the most precious thing I've got. And God, that's what God gave us. And that's the Eucharist. God is with us. God is with us.
Ultimately, to order copies of this video by credit card or for a list of other films by the Mercy Foundation, call toll-free 888-286-3729. That's 888-AT-MERCY. The call is free. To order by mail, send $24.95 per video plus $4 shipping and handling to the Mercy Foundation, Post Office Box 383, Mundelein, Illinois, 60060.